Recording in progress.
Boom. Hello, Mia. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Pretty good.
Thanks for starting this team.
No problem. Looks like there are a lot of people anxious to get started, and let's see how many of them join us today. Part of the concern is, a few of them I'm trying to get contact with are in Australia, and then I also had somebody express interest from India, so the time zones are going to be a challenge for this project, I think.
Absolutely.
Where are you based?
Georgia.
Okay, so you're probably the same time zone I am. Eastern?
Yes. Where are you?
I'm in Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Just send out a note in the Slack channel. Laurel, are you able to hear us?
Windows 11, I never know which headset's going to work.
Welcome.
It's been a joy being part of the Insider's preview of Windows 11.
Yeah, sorry for your troubles.
All
Just tell
good.
them no. Maybe we don't want to do that right now. Sorry.
I'm sure they'll get it all worked out. Thank you for organizing this. Hopefully other people will show up.
Yep, Bethany's coming in. Say hello to
go.
Mia.
Hey there, sorry, I just got off of work.
Understood. I'm just typing a note elsewhere in Slack while we let people join in. We've got Mia and Laurel. Mia tells me she's in Georgia. Where's Bethany based?
I'm just outside of Austin, Texas.
Okay.
Where are you, Brian?
I'm in Michigan.
Oh, okay.
And we haven't asked Laurel yet. She stepped away from her camera.
Gotcha. Nice to meet y'all.
Good to meet you. Laurel, are you hearing us?
I am.
Can you tell us where you're at?
I'm in Toronto.
Oh, Good to meet you.
Sorry, the kettle boiled.
It's okay. I'm not too far south of you. Outside of Detroit and Plymouth, so halfway between Ann Arbor and Detroit.
Cool.
I'm going to mute a moment. I've got a phone call coming in. We'll just wait a couple moments for other people to join us. Hello? Yet another robot call with nobody there.
I get so many of those lately.
Yeah.
It's been really, really bad lately.
Yeah. Very.
So I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and start. I've got an agenda set up. And the main part of the agenda today is just get to know each other and see what your interests are. Hopefully you're seeing my Word doc.
Yes.
Okay, I'll zoom in.
Thank you.
It's not so much for you, but for me. That was really small. But the thinking is this is sort of the agenda, the short version of it, and then we'll get into details later. Got a spelling error in there. So I want to go through introductions. Review the team purpose. Basically, when you build a team within the xAPI cohort, you sort of have to come up with a reason for meeting. And I want to get to where we understand everybody's reasons for coming together and not just mine. I mean, I see myself as a facilitator. It's not my team, it's our team, and we want to use this first kickoff meeting to sort of discuss our purpose, our interest for coming in. That's sort of the next step. Review existing tools. I just want to go through what the xAPI cohort wants us to set up. So we're going to talk about Slack. We're going to talk about GitHub, and get an understanding whether or not everybody has access to those tools. And then at the tail end, I want to revise the goals and set timing, meaning what do we need to do when against the agendas for the following weeks. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. We've sort of done the introductions. We've talked about ourselves, our name, location. We just want to get clarity on the time zones. I'd like to ask if you have experience with xAPI, and really the focus there is this your first cohort? If not, what have you done in other cohorts? If you want to get into your experience with LRSs or related experience, that's also helpful. Other typo. And then I want to know what made this interesting for you. Why are you interested in profiles? What are your expectations? Does anybody want to jump up and offer their introduction?
Sure. So this is Bethany. As I mentioned, I'm just outside of Austin, Texas, so I'm in Central Time Zone. My xAPI experience, I am a beginner, but I have been kind of stalking the cohort for about a year now. So this is my third cohort, but I have just been lurking and I wanted to participate this time. I have worked, I've created statements and I've worked with Veracity a little bit and a little bit with StormCloud. But I'm also trying to get the Litmos LRS to work because that's what we use at work. That is really where my challenges have come in, is just trying to get things to work with Litmos. So I feel like I just need to understand profiles and statements and everything a little bit more to get it to work successfully, because that one's not as user friendly as Veracity and StormCloud are. So that's basically, was that everything? I think I got it.
Yes, I think you got it all
Cool.
in there. And I think the implication is you're driving to get Litmos working, so that's sort of why you're interested. So your expectations are, maybe that's something you might elaborate on.
Yeah. I mean, my expectations are just to kind of learn more and understand more, because I think with Litmos, you really have to be more of a developer than like an instructional designer like I am to really use their LRS. So I just feel like I need to learn more about it overall to really understand it. And that might make it easier for me to use in Litmos. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay, cool.
Good. Who's up next?
I can go next. So I'm Laurel, and I'm in Toronto. I am between gigs at the moment, so I'm looking for a new opportunity. Previously, I've been a product manager, and a product manager basically focused on training. So that sort of LMS, LXP integration, and enablement of sort of that ecosystem. I'm interested in this project because I'm interested in learning more about xAPI. I've worked with other APIs and other data sources. So in product management, as Megan has said and others have said, we have a much richer data source available to us through all sorts of really cool tools. So I can understand in product which button, which pages, all of the interactions. We don't have that kind of information readily available in a lot of the existing LMSs. They tend to be very SCORM heavy and not a lot of xAPI. So this is interesting to me, and because I'm between gigs at the moment, I don't have a software, like I don't have Captivate or Articulate. I don't have anything I can hold on to. And this seems to be a project where I can be useful and get my hands dirty without having all of those other requirements.
Understood.
So I guess that leaves me. My name's Mia. I'm outside of Atlanta, more Macon, Georgia. I do have a little bit of API experience, but I still would consider myself at the beginner level. As far as LRSs go, I built a training some years ago, just kind of playing around, and I used Watershed, and it was interesting on how, so I tried to do these statements and whatnot, and see how it functioned inside of the LRS. And I really did enjoy it, which is why I keep coming back to these cohorts. I generally lurk more than participate. So this one definitely, this project, as well as the Unity, even though that one didn't really catch on, piqued my interest. As far as expectations, I did try to do a project some years ago. I felt like it was more, I didn't feel as concrete in my own experience and skill sets to be able to really participate. So I guess I'm interested to see if there is a way that I could be useful in this.
Okay. And that leaves me. So as I mentioned, I'm Brian Duck. As I mentioned, I'm in Michigan. And that actually leads me to most of my work. My experience has been automotive in nature. So I'm actually contracted with Ford Motor Company Manufacturing right now. And I'm in the position where they have actually listened to me and are buying an LMS or licensing the software, if you know what I mean. And we're in what they call a proof of concept for about 6 months. Once we launch, probably October, maybe November it'll start. We will be posting materials into our existing LMS, which is Saba. Our emerging LMS is going to be Oracle, but it is not yet available to us at this point, so we're still working with Saba. We also have access to Degreed, and the people I talked to at Watershed tell me that they worked quite a bit with Degreed and have good connections in terms of sending data back and forth from the LRS into Degreed and vice versa. So my expectations, I sort of want to dive in with the profiles and get a better understanding of using them as a starting point. So what I've done so far is done quite a bit of exploration within the xAPI profile server, which is a website, and that server has a listing of profiles. And I guess that was the unasked question, was how familiar are you with profiles as a concept versus statements? Should we take a minute and ask each of you to answer that?
It's still something I'm wrapping my head around.
Okay. That was Bethany?
Yes, sorry.
You just didn't see the highlight.
This is Mia, same as Bethany.
Okay. Lauren, any different?
No, I've fallen into the same category.
Okay. And that's not a problem. We'll be discovering together. Okay, let's see. So I called you Lauren. My apologies. It's Laurel. I see that in the participants list. Now I have that up on the screen. Shouldn't do that again. So my understanding, the best way I like to characterize profiles is it's more of a recipe where the actor verb object is the structure of a single statement. When you talk about profiles, you're saying I need to build something for a particular purpose, and that means I may be working with video, or I may be working with, like, Unity would be VR or AR type of interactions, and then somebody else might be working with something that's completely storyline or Captivate driven, completely e-learning, which, you know, you're sort of looking at, okay, what was SCORM able to do, and what goes beyond that? What can xAPI do that goes beyond that? And that gets you into an understanding of what a grouping, if you will, of the statements are going to give you. And the fundamental structure, aside from what I mentioned, actor verb object, of a statement is, how do you track when somebody started something, paused it, come back to it, completed it, and did they earn a score or earn a grade? That whole series, if you will, of transactions becomes something you want to manage consistently. And that means, well, I want a recipe for doing it, and that means we need a profile for how to do it. If does that help elaborate just briefly? Nods or silence?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Okay. So, I know we're just kicking off, and I didn't really need to want to dive into a lot of that, but I think one of the things we need to do as a team is validate by the end of the meeting, is this the right place for me, for each of you, and sort of give that perspective on what a profile is and why it will help us, is like a good starting point. I think, in my learning, I've sort of cut myself off. I've been in xAPI Cohort for about 2 years now. I've done work with Team Makey, or I've led multiple teams, I should say. One of them was called Team Makey, where we actually connected hardware into a computer and sent xAPI statements from that hardware. And that sort of, that helped me to explore and understand it's not just someone sitting at a keyboard, or working at a desktop computer that's having these interactions. It can come from anywhere. And, the later projects actually include, last cohort, I did a project with a bunch of live code developers, and live code is a multi-platform tool. One of the things you can do is build an application either for Mac, Windows, or Linux, but that same code base can also go out to iOS or Android. And the idea being is we built learning record providers from that software. I could put it onto an iOS device and send a statement from my tablet or send a statement from my phone. And that sort of opens up, beyond the expectations of what an LMS can do, into what really can xAPI be used to drive statements into a system. And part of the effort, I mentioned I'm working at Ford, part of the effort there is we actually have operators who are being trained on the plant floor. We might be able to set up at that organization, we might be able to take some of the hardware and set up a simulation where they might not actually be manufacturing parts, but they're working through a simulation either in VR, in Unity, or in the actual hardware, but they're not manufacturing parts, and have it trigger statements being sent that they were able to complete a process, and that process leads to another stage, and they have to complete the next process. And hopefully we'll be able to get to where I can show you some demos. I'm not really sure on how well we're going to be able to approach that, but there's some examples I can show you as we move along. So my API experience, I've set up LRSs within Veracity, Watershed, Swarm Cloud. I'm also looking at how to build, or I should say deploy, because I'm not building it, but set up an LRS from the open source. Yet Analytics has one, and then Veracity has one, where you can put it onto your own computer or another computer on your network, and you're not having to have internet access. So that means within our plan environment, I may be able to walk in there with some hardware, power up a tablet, and have the tablet send statements that are just queued or stored to a local device. And then once I bring it back outside and put it on the public internet, it can transfer all those xAPI statements in bulk or one after another and get them registered into an LRS. So that's that piece. What makes profiles interesting to me is I've actually also done some work with building some tools to help me analyze and understand what the structure of the profiles are, and to introspect within them and understand that, beyond looking at the JavaScript, but actually building that into a user interface and get some working understanding of how they interconnect. And one of the challenges or gaps that I have seen is that on that, let me go ahead and jump into it. On the on the profile server, let's see if I can do typos as I'm talking. It's USA Learning, right? There it is, okay. So if I'm still sharing, this should come up. Profiles.usalearning.net is the xAPI profile server, and it jumped me onto a page called Getting Started. If I just click over here on Profiles, is that making sense? Have people seen this? Or is this the first time you've seen it?
I was looking at it briefly.
Okay. Lauren or Mia, one of you spoke and I didn't hear it.
Oh, that might have been me, Bethany. I haven't seen this. I've only seen a brief description of xAPI profiles on xapi.com.
Okay. So this was recently launched, I think, April or May-ish, so it's still fairly new. And the idea is, that as I scroll down, this is some of the data about what is stored on these, but there's listings here of published profiles. And if we sort of follow on the metaphor I used, I'm just going to click on video because it's something we all can relate to. The first thing you see is the profile details, just an abstract, some URIs, that IRIs in this case, that mention where it relates to, and then a description of the project. In this case, there's actually documentation on a GitHub. If you want to get into that, it's just like, it's sort of like looking at the xAPI specification. It's a lot of detail, and I don't really want to drag us there right now. What I do want to show is these other pieces. There are templates, patterns, and concepts. And the other tools up here is, I'm actually an admin on this site, so I have the ability to edit the profile details. But I can also go in and download, this is what the arrow down link shows us. I can download the JSON LD file from this. So I'm just going to put that in my downloads folder if I see that somewhere. And it's not. I'm going to also date it, because one of the things I'm sort of tracking is, are they changing? And if I go into the concepts link, what you'll see is a series of actor, verb, objects, as well as extensions and activity types. And it gets into all the definitions that come up when we talk about the profiles and the statements, the statements themselves. So for example, if someone is looking at the video and they click pause, what the profile recommends is you use this form of paused. And if I click on it, it's going to take me to that verb and talk about the details and talk about the IRI that they want you to relate that to. So within the specification, within a statement, they're looking for information like you see here, that it's a verb and that you're using this IRI or this variation of a URL. So as you're working within your environment and you're building a statement, if you use the word paused, you can define it with different information on different sites. There's different sites that list all these verbs. The two main ones, one of them is Tin Can, and the other one is the ADL listing of vocabulary. They call it the ADL vocabulary server. And we can talk about those later. So Tin Can has for the most part been absorbed into the ADL's vocabulary server. And then Torrance Learning has actually published their own. And they're not publishing their own to be different. They're publishing their own because the ADL one has occasional outages. Occasionally it's just not available. And of course, it's sort of critical if you're in the process of writing these, you want to have access to it. So they've found it to be valuable to host similar content on their own server. But if I step back from the detail of paused and go back to look at the overall profile, you're seeing that there's a whole list of things that can happen. And the expectation is, beyond just the general information that's included as common in most statements, if you're using video, the implication here is that you would use these words, these verbs, extensions, all the things I'm listing here in this column. It's not just verbs, but it's also activity types and extensions. So does that help understand what these concepts are? We're talking about keywords of different types. The verbs is the most common, but the activity type and the extension are also expected to be used. Extensions are actually sort of above and beyond, but it helps you get at critical detail. If you want to add something in, a completion threshold is how you could add in that you're expecting somebody to perform 80%. And we're talking about a video, so you could use that to say, I want you to view 80% of the video before I'm going to mark it as complete. And by putting it in that statement, you're able to tell the LRS that's what you expect. And then, of course, you need to add another keyword, another variable that says, here's what their current value is. So if someone pauses a video and closes it, and you generate a statement from that, you would be telling the LRS what that completion threshold is, and the software within your statement would be telling it this person was at 90%. And then the LRS can literally make the judgment, the assessment, that they've passed that completion threshold and that should be marked as complete for that user. Does that help? Or am I driving in the weeds? Are we in too deep?
I'm fine with it. What I would sort of translate it into is a profile is a template for how you're going to collect the data, normalize the data from different sources, and feed it into the LRS so that you can have video and knowledge base articles or an articulate course that are collecting some of the same elements and some different elements, but those profiles will determine which elements can be collected in which of those, or which elements are being collected in all of those, and normalize it in a way that, for example, if you were extracting things in a CSV, you'd end up with different columns in each of those things and could not put them together. The profiles do all of the work for us so that all of the columns are nice and neat and everything lands in our LRS. Is that a...
Yes, I think that's well said. Anyone else have any comments or questions? I just need to set a timer. We're getting our 10-minute warning.
Yeah. No, this all makes sense to me. The part I struggle with the most is the actor piece. And the reason for that is because, we're trying to pull data from our LMS rather than have somebody put a text entry of their name and email address, because that's just not a good user experience. So I find I've not been able to find any information about how to set up the actor and the information so it'll pull from an LMS without having data entries. I don't know if that's even part of all this, but that's like my main challenge.
No, that is definitely a key. I don't know that we're going to be able to get into that level of detail for your LRS and your LMS, but that is a key thing, is you want to pull the data that you've already got instead of asking them, for that information.
Yeah.
In our pilot, we will actually, in order to avoid collecting personal identifiable information, we're actually just going to generate something for each user.
Yeah.
And simulate that it's an actual ID. But part of the corporate process tends to be, well, where can that information come from? In your case, an LMS is already set up, so that's usually the first place they look.
Yeah.
But the other thing that they might look at is, can we get it from like an LDAP or directory server, which is managed by IT, and then you'd have access to some IT resources where you could say, how do I get that information out? And that that might be a way for you to do it alternatively if you don't want to, if you don't have IT resources that are able to support your LMS. I do have some horror stories, but I'll try not to. Depending on which LMS you use, there's always challenges.
That is for sure.
So, and I lost my notes somewhere here on my screen, so I can't remember if you were talking about Lismos or if that was someone else.
That was me, yeah.
Okay.
Litmos is the one. So we're using their LMS and trying to test the LRS, and it's just they're not communicating, and it's probably me, but you know, I'm just hoping to understand the actor portion a little bit better, and maybe I'll learn something that'll help.
Okay, so one of the things that we could do, I mean, part of what I'm going to do right now is just sort of page through this so you can see the different types of profiles that are already there. We dove into video. There's also audio. Martin talked a bit about CMI5. CMI5, to put it briefly, is a package concept like SCORM is, and it's coming out as a way to use xAPI as a replacement, if you will, for SCORM, to sort of go above and beyond it as next generation. There's specifics for DoD, ISD use. There's a flashcard approach, a K-12 education apps approach, and then badges, as well as PDF annotation and serious games for something that's an interactive. Might be something you could use for Unity, but then there are other ones that are also talking about VR and XR. So if it's gaming focused or the other ones, you might look at that. There's a tin can, which, like I mentioned, is really going back to the beta version of what is now the xAPI vocabulary. Virtual patient deals with healthcare and all the aspects of anatomy and the idea, the concepts of complaints and what my symptoms are, leading to a diagnosis and validating all that. So there's quite a bit of detail around that one. I can't really describe across X without diving into that one. Navy Common Reference is actually one I want for us to take a look at in future meetings. So we're going to come back to that because it can serve as the common reference. It might be valuable for all of us to start there. TLA is Total Learning Architecture, which is a DoD initiative. They also call it a learning ecosystem. And it is very large, very robust, and as you might imagine, very complex. So it is probably not a good starting point, although a lot of us might wind up looking at that for some of the details. Actionable Data Book, I'm not really sure what Actionable Data Book refers to, but there are other profiles that talk about e-publication formats. It might be something similar to that. IMS Global Learning Tool Interoperability is the best thing I could do, I think, is call it a parallel standard, and they're looking to come together by setting up an xAPI profile that lets us integrate rather than it being right now. It is sort of a us or them approach. As we move to support them within the profiles, it becomes, how do you want to implement this rather than are you using this one or that one. Simulations get into the details around either software simulations or some of the hardware things I've mentioned. And then there's also a SCORM profile where they're actually looking at mapping SCORM fields and files, fields and XML-based data that exists within SCORM into xAPI. And then I'm going to go on to the third page. We get into performance support, a content repository, and then social media. And the social media one, I want to point out, was only added about 2 weeks ago, 15 days ago. So these are still emerging, and the other thing to know about this site is that it's constantly being updated and upgraded. And the other thing I was going to do is put that URL in the chat, but I'm not seeing, there it is, okay. I'm not seeing my controls. This is also a good time for me to remember that if you don't have Slack up and running, I need to share with you the URL to get into this meeting again, because by now your page has changed. The page that you link to this meeting from is no longer showing you join the meeting. It's now showing you a survey. So I'm going to put this into the chat. If you don't have it handy, you should copy it now, because we do have less than 2 minutes left in this meeting. All I mean by that is I should say this session of Zoom, I do plan to continue on and finish with our agenda, but I wanted to go back and show you, you should have that link ready and make sure you have the ability to sign back into the meeting. Does anyone have any conflicts? Are we able to continue after the meeting? I'm doing
I'm
a lot of
good for a while.
I'm good for like maybe 10 more minutes.
Okay, so there's not a lot of time, but I sort of dove us into the profile things because people were needing that. But
yeah,
what I wanted to do, I mean, we sort of accomplished that quickly now. We can always come back and revisit that one. But I mentioned I want to, as my goal, I want to discuss and elaborate the Navy Common Reference Profile and get into that standard and those documents and review that with you. And then I want to talk a bit about the tools for profile use, for common references versus published profile consumption. That's sort of where I think we want to be. And one of the key challenges is, I mentioned that I downloaded that JSON LD file. My timer's going off. I downloaded that JSON LD file, but that whole list of verbs includes some common expected verbs, and then the JSON LD file is a subset of that, which is just for the video profile. I didn't actually get into that. So at this point, we need to stop and sign back into the video, and then we'll continue on going through the agenda. Any concerns or questions before I end the meeting?
Has everyone grabbed the URL?
Yes, everyone should grab the URL, I hope. Including me. Oh, wow. That's interesting, okay. That's a challenge. Open Zoom. Get back into the meeting as soon as we can here.
Recording in progress.
Hello.
hi.
Hi, Bethany. Mia should be joining, and hopefully we'll get Lauren back in here too. There she is. Okay, good. And Judy. Judy's able to join us now.
And we're back.
Yes, we're back. And we have Judy joining us.
Hey, Brian.
Hi there. I think you said something. Just hello, probably.
Yes, I am in rural Texas right now, and so my signal is not very good. Are you hearing me okay?
Yes. I think it was just connecting.
So did y'all have a meeting?
We are sort of in the middle of it. We just bounced back in because the Zoom 40-minute mark.
The 40-minute thing. Yeah, okay.
So are you seeing the share?
I am.
Okay, good. So what we've done so far is I'll just rewind a little bit for you because we're going to make you do the introduction thing.
Oh, no.
This is sort of our quick agenda. And then we did introductions. We have somebody from Georgia, somebody from, oh, help me, Toronto. And why am I blanking on the third? Who'd I miss?
Excellent.
Oh, there you go. So if you can, Judy, can you tell us a little more about your interest, your experience?
Sure.
What makes profiles interesting for you?
Sure. So I'm normally in Portland, Oregon. So West Coast, Best Coast. And I am an instructional designer. So I've been interested in learning more about xAPI for, 10 years. And I am the product manager for Pebble Pro, which is a new authoring tool that is xAPI first. So, it does Swarm, but it's an xAPI tool at heart. We need to create a profile for it. So this is one of the things that we've been intending to do around launch, which we're about 2 months out from launch. So I thought that was something that I need to learn more about, and something that we might be able to accomplish, or I might be able to accomplish over this semester. We've I don't know if anyone else has been around over the past few semesters when we've been doing Pebble related projects, but I don't think there is going to be a Team Pebble other than otherwise. We kind of have, for a few semesters, we've been doing things surrounding how do we author better with Pebble, and now Pebble Pro is here as the authoring tool, so it's that problem is kind of solved. And so, there are so many things I want to learn about xAPI, but if I can do something related to work that actually helps, then that's very key. And that's very good. So that's something that I would like to be able to do.
Okay, sounds good. So part of what we want to do today, continuing the agenda, thank you, Judy, is to talk through our review our stated purpose and goals. Sorry, I'm confused by my own words. And I mentioned this earlier. When I set up the meeting, when I set up the poll, I have to sort of put out there what I think it should be. And the goal is for us to consent really on what we think it should be. So this I consider to be the draft. This is what was up there in the main channel. And I've sort of touched on a little bit. We want to explore that xAPI profile server a little better. We just completed that, Judy, before you came in. So everybody here has had a chance to look at it. Have you looked at it on your own?
I have a bit, yeah. Okay. I've seen, demos of it. Yep. I've had my ear to the ground for a while, trying to figure out when it was going to launch. So yeah, I have looked at it a little bit.
Okay, good. So we're sort of on the same page about that then, as we have an idea what it is, and there's a lot of information out there, and now from my perspective, we want to get into, okay, how do we use that? How do we make use of that information? And I've mentioned that I see part of that discussion and elaboration being looking at the Navy Common Reference Profile, because that is actually a good document that has been published by Jason, I want to say Haig. Haig, thank you. Jason Haig of Veracity. And he has actually offered to come on to a session with us and talk us through some of that information. So that might be a good point to have another subject matter expert come in and talk to us a bit about what the design that they saw going into that material, and then we can look at, okay, how do we adapt that for our use, for each of our uses? Because as I understand it, that document is in the public domain, and we would be able to take that and modify it for our use. For example, you could publish details from that for Pebble users as a getting started guide, if that makes sense to you.
I think so.
Okay. We'll talk about it up further. And then the next one down is elaboration of tools for using the profiles. The common reference, as I mentioned, and then I want to get into how do we consume a published profile? What, once we see the information, how do we actually adapt it, put it onto a server and start sending statements with it? So I want to get us into that level of interaction. This is just a repaste This is actually a graphic up here, so this is a repaste in case there's changes. And then the other description I made is in the Slack channel. This channel is meant as a getting started primer for xAPI profiles. Again, we want to explore and view the server, explore and discuss the common reference profile. So now is a chance for us to discuss and elaborate goals. Can I just ask you to sort of chime in and let me know what you think? And do you see things differently? Do you want to add or modify what I have in there? I need an audience interaction button because now's your chance.
We are the students that we all hate.
Right.
It's so easy to put your head down in this environment, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I'm more than happy to chime in, but I feel like since I'm the only one that I've heard talk other than you, Brian, I feel like I'm the only one talking. So please don't let me be overbearing here. For me, you know, if I learn enough to be able to do the xAPI or the xAPI profile for Pebble Pro, that would be great. If we actually use Pebble Pro as a use case, like a concrete thing to work on, and we actually do the profile for it, that would also be great. Either one, I would feel like this is time well spent.
Yeah, I'm with Judy.
Did I get that right? Go ahead, Bethany. Sorry.
Oh, no worries, no worries. I just I feel like if I can learn enough to at least help me understand profiles a little bit more, so maybe I can have more success for my potential use case, which I know would be too much for us to do. But yeah, I really this seems to at least help me to, you know, understand it more. I believe if that's our goal, then yeah.
Yep. Laurel or Mia, do you have any comments?
Yeah, no, it's yes. All of the above is fine with me. And I can go with any of those. I'm just looking at the 47 pages in the Navy Common Reference Profile.
Yeah, don't get
hey, look,
overwhelmed.
I spent years working on payment gateways. This is easy. From an API standpoint, this is so much easier.
Nice.
These are the printouts beginning with that document. So
Yeah.
there's a few of them. It's a smaller binder. I've had larger binders. But yeah, there's a lot of information there. But the point is it's a reference.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a story that you read from start to front. It's okay, what am I working on now? And some of it gives you guidance as to here's a checklist of what you need.
Yeah.
And that's a great place to get started. So that's why I think it's helpful.
It looks like a great doc. And I mean that sincerely.
Okay, good. Jason only did a webinar on it, I think, within this month, since it's the 30th. It's been less than a month since it's been sort of announced as available. The Navy's had it since December last year. But it's actually, like I said, I believe its status is public domain, so we can actually look and verify that and then look at how do we make use of it as a starting point. Mia, I don't want to leave you uncovered, but if you don't have anything to say, I can accept that too.
No, I'm just listening and taking everything in. I'm with Laurel. I'm okay with all the above.
Okay. I'm going to add you to that line then, and you know, it's all text. It's nothing but electrons here. So anytime we want to change this or come back to it, I'm fine with that. I'm not carving this in stone. So one of the follow-on questions I had was, what kind of output should this project have? What would you be proud to deliver? And or what is it that you need to get started using a profile? And I guess the third question would be, do we know enough now to answer that question? Any comments or dialogue?
I feel like I need to explore this side a little bit before being able to answer that second question.
Okay.
And possibly the first, just to understand it a little bit better. But I'm totally cool with the Pebble being an example that we use. I mean,
Okay.
even if it's not what our all of our outcomes are, we're still going to learn from it, right?
Yes, we will.
Yeah, there's something
And-
to be said for learning from a concrete rather than an abstract
Exactly.
example.
Yeah, I love doing that. And whether, in terms of the first question, what would we be proud to deliver? I would love to deliver a profile. The same way, I like learning by doing a thing. If this group wants to work on Pebble Pro, that's fantastic. If we want to work on something else, I will be just as involved anyway.
I got to drop at the hour.
Okay.
I do as well. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, you're not alone. So the other thing I had on the agenda, we'll just try and race through a little bit here, is I wanted to ask rather than do you need help understanding what the Slack channel is, what the GitHub looks like, and what those tools are and what they do for us?
I don't think so.
Well, let me ask this way. Does everyone have a user ID, and are you connected to the Slack channel?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm on the Mac. This is my version of Slack. And not only do I have access to main up here, you want to have access to Team xAPI profile. And so does everyone have that level of access?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. That is sort of the key, is you want to be able to see what's posted in there. And similar, I can show you GitHub and sort of ask the same way, if I have that available. So this is our GitHub page, and this was just published today. And I need to go in and find chat again because it's hiding on me. Too many screens open. So I'm going to put the URL in there if you don't have it. The challenge is, does everyone have a GitHub account?
Yes.
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 Okay, good. Do you all have access to the cohort, xAPI cohort?
Yes.
Good.
Uh-huh.
Okay, with that information, you should be able to use this URL, and it is in the chat. You can click on it now or later, and it should take you to this section. Now, the truth is I'm perfectly fine working as facilitator and writing these up each week. That's sort of what what has become part of the habit. But all this information is out there, and once you get that page, you can simply click on these to navigate back to it. That's part of why I built it this way. Our When to Meet is out there. The GitHub repo, we don't have anything in there for code yet, but we could put documents in there as well. And then the team discussion area, as well as the team page. This team page is what Jess shows that has the status and the report outs on it each week. So if you want to look at that, and if you want to see the other team's links, that is the way to do it. And I think if I just click on that in a new tab, maybe it didn't. I stand corrected. That is not the page I thought it was. Not this URL. I'll put that one in there.
Do fall-2021 after teams/fall-2021 should take you there.
Okay, thank you. So I fell down. I thought I had it in there. Yeah, that's still not right. And I'm fumbling around when other people need to leave. So let's just wrap things up real quick. I can work on getting you that URL. So the only other thing I wanted to look at was what our goals would be for follow-on meetings. I talked a bit about having, we want to understand more on the profile server. And one of the things, or two of the things we could talk about is having Jason and or Aaron Silvers come out and talk a bit about the profile server. Would that be of interest to people?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll see if I can set some, I'll give that the priority and ask them what their timing might be. The other question I need to ask is we did this fairly quickly. We got this timing together for a meeting tonight. I know I'm bouncing over. My apologies. Is this a good time to meet weekly?
Today's Thursday, right?
Yes.
Every other week I have a meeting at 5, but I can join halfway through, 5 Central. So this week it works. Next week I have a meeting. The week after that it works.
5 Central.
But
Anyone
yeah,
else?
I can join halfway through.
I mean, the other option is to send out another when to meet, but the other thing I have to be aware of is we got 5 of us on the call, so I want to see what other people say as they look at the calendar. But
normally this is great for me.
Say again?
Normally this is great for me.
Okay.
So this week is just a little weird.
Okay. Any questions or concerns before we wrap it up?
Nope.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay. You're all welcome, and
thank you.
I'll post the recording so other people can catch up with us. If you have questions or concerns, put them in the Slack channel. That's what it's there for. We want everybody to be able to see them, and don't be afraid to ask questions. We're all learning from each other.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Meet everybody.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Bye. You too.